If you've been around the channel for a while, you know my opinion on the Mean Girls musical. It's not one that I'm a massive fan of. I've struggled with it for a while, and I've never really been able to get into it. I'm a big fan of the original film, so it really did bother me for quite a while that I wasn't really into the Mean Girls musical. Of course, a lot of my opinions on this are shaped from listening to the cast album and other ways. I haven't sat down and been able to experience the show in the way that you're meant to experience it, live on stage. So that's why I've been less definite with my opinion on this show, because I feel like I've only seen about 75% of the full picture. So when they announced they were making a film out of the Mean Girls musical, I wasn't as excited as everyone else, and going into it, I was kind of expecting what we were going to get. The reaction to this film has been quite mixed, to say the least, with a lot of people moaning about it on TikTok. So what is my opinion on this film? Did it resolve any problems from the stage show that I have? Or did I still struggle with it? Let's find out. But if you haven't seen my face before, hi, I'm Ellie. I talk about theatre. I am the most chaotic theatre person on the internet. I do reviews, I do discussions, I do video essays, and if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me out how to start the channel. But let's get into the Mean Girls musical film on the screen, not on stage. It was originally on the stage, but now it's on the screen. I haven't actually reviewed a musical film in quite a while, so I'm going to dust off my old criteria. I feel like to make a musical film that's even going to remotely work, you need to succeed at two basic criteria. Number one, you need to adapt. Things that worked on stage may not necessarily work on film. So you've got to change things up. You've got to cut things. If you just take everything you did on stage and put it onto screen, 9 times out of 10, this is not going to work. And this is why musical films like Rent or The Producers have really struggled. But I think criteria number 2 is always the most important one to me. And that is you need to stylize. The natural language of filmmaking does not work for musical theatre, because what you don't get in a film that you get on stage is that suspension of disbelief. On stage, you're in the room. You can see the actors on stage. You know, in the back of your mind, even if you are getting really engaged into this story, you know that what is going on is fake. So when people are bursting into song and dance, it feels more natural, but film is a snapshot of real life. So because of this, there is no suspension of disbelief when you're watching a film. So if you film this like any other film, it's going to feel wrong when these characters break out into song. The way you get around this is you stylize, and you add that sense of non-realism into this style of filmmaking, into the cinematography, to make it feel more normal, allowing what you would normally get on stage naturally, that suspension of disbelief. I think one of the biggest problems with the Mean Girls film is that on both of these two criteria, it goes about halfway. So I'm going to walk through the film beat by bit, and I'm going to pick out the moments and the songs where I feel like it kind of struggles to live up to these two criteria. The film starts in a garage as we get the song Cautionary Tale, sung by Janice and Symeon. This is recorded like it's being filmed on a smartphone, which is a cute bit of stylization that they use throughout the entire film, but it's not very interesting. It's not very bold. And honestly, in a day and age where we're seeing a lot more things being filmed like this, it isn't enough to build that suspension of disbelief. It's a nice song, it's cute, and it's performed well by our two cast members here. Our Lily Cravallo and Jaquel Spivey are really, really strong as Janice and Symeon. I think out of all of the cast in this film, these two are probably my favorites. I think in general in Mean Girls, these two are like the best roles. They have a really lovely presence on screen, and while I haven't always appreciated this song, in this version and actually seeing it as a whole, I think it's really nice to start this story with these two. Even if we're losing a little bit the sense from the original that it's being more narrated from Katie's perspective. I think in terms of adaptation, this is a smart idea. We then move very quickly into Africa, where we meet Katie for the first time, and we get a new song in this film, What Ifs. Now, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be fairly blunt. cutting half of the score from the original musical was a very, very good idea. And I'm not just saying this because I'm not a massive fan of this score. I think a lot of musical films are scared to cut things because you always get people moaning, oh, why was this song cut? Why was this song cut? When, for the natural pace of a film, you've got to cut some songs. And the ones they kept in this film are all of the best songs from that score. The songs that they remove would not work in a film. No matter your opinion on a song like Stop, that song would have really dragged this film to a halt. Whereas that is a little bit more forgivable in a musical, which is naturally a little bit longer. But beyond that, I think cutting It Roars and replacing it with What Ifs was a strange decision. I can understand why. I think this film and this version of Mean Girls feels a little bit worried about touching a lot of the discussions about Katie's time in Africa and touching on some of the music that they use in lieu of discussions about cultural appropriation that have popped up since this musical was written. You can see this in a lot of the reorchestrations of this score and the decision to cut It Roars. But What Ifs is so forgettable. It's a really bland song that feels like it's over before it's even started. And here we get to talk about who I think is the weakest element of this film in the cast, and that is unfortunately Angourie Rice as Katie. I think it's very clear that they've tried a lot of time to suit the music a bit more to her vocal strengths. But still, when you have some really, really heavy hitter musical theatre performers, she does stick out a little bit like a sore thumb. I don't think her performance goes far enough with a lot of the style of Mean Girls, which is meant to be a little bit silly. It's meant to be over the top and campy. So Katie moves over to America. She goes to high school. She's introduced to her classes. She meets Symeon and Janice after they find her eating in the bathroom. And you kind of get the sense that the start of this film is moving very quickly. Compared to the pace of the original film and, alternatively, the pace of the original musical, this is so fast. This is probably due to the fact that they cut like 5 songs from this opening, as we don't get the whole of Meet the Plastics. We don't get Where Do You Belong, which, honestly, thank God. And sure, I think there's justification of why these songs needed to be cut, but it does have a really weird effect on the pace that I feel like should have been padded out a little bit more and given some more meat on the bones script-wise if you're going to take out all of this music. Eventually, we meet the Plastics, who look like literally everyone else in this school. There is nothing visually to like differentiate the Plastics from everyone else. The Plastics introduction in this film is so strange. I'm going to compare this to the musical for a second. Take the musical version. You have Where Do You Belong? It's this big flashy number, and then when the Plastics come in, everything changes. Tonally, it's different. There is a sudden click. You have the entire projection wall completely change its color. You have their table lit very distinctly. You have it pushed center stage right in the middle, so you know exactly who the Plastics are and where they are. They have this air of importance about them that is portrayed through the staging of this version. Compare this to their introduction in the film. There's just one cut and they're just on a table in the middle of the lunch hall. They could literally just be anyone else. They're just there. They just look slightly prettier, I guess. Cool. It's lacking that impact. And I think it goes to show how much even just a little bit of thinking through positioning on screen and cinematography and how you like align a shot says a lot about these characters you're portraying. By having them just be on a random table, it makes them look less arrogant as characters, when that's a very important part of who they are. Their table should be away from everyone else. Their table should be elevated. Their table should be like the best one. These little details and the dramaturgy tells you a lot about these characters, and without that element, it really weakens the impact. What else weakens their introduction is cutting down Meet the Plastics. I think this is probably one of the only cuts that I really disagree with. Mainly because they cut all of the good parts of Meet the Plastics. I will give the Mean Girls musical credit where credit is due, which I feel like I'm doing quite fairly. Yeah, I don't really like the Mean Girls stage musical, but there are a lot of elements that it does get right. Like introducing the plastics. It gives each of them a little bit of time, and the musical styles are very different to each one. You have Gretchen's one, which is very fast-paced, where she's kind of doing it's almost like a patter song, I guess. It reflects her personality. Karen's really slows down. At least that immediately introduces you to her character through the music. But then there's Regina's bit, and it's all to do with the lyrics here. This is going to be a big tangent, and I'm going to rant about something that's going to seem unimportant here. But I really dislike how this musical has Regina George say her name over and over again. If you're the most popular person in school, you don't need to talk about yourself. Other people will do it for you. Think about the musical Heathers. There's a lot of similarities between Heathers and Mean Girls. Heather Chandler does not need to tell people her name. She doesn't need to introduce herself. She doesn't need to do any of that. She is powerful enough, she is strong enough that everyone knows who she is. And that tells you a lot about her character through what she gets given in her material. And I feel like this has repercussions through the entire musical as well. Because imagine how much more impactful it would be and how much more it would actually mean in the subtext of this musical if it's Worldburn when she is the one who's having to say, my name is Regina George, because she's lost her popularity, because she's down at rock bottom. She's lost all of that, and now she's angry and she's mad, and she's going to make sure people know her now. And this is one of my main problems with the Mean Girls musical as a whole. The lyrics don't really dive much into subtext. It's very surface level. So when I say that this film has a lot of the same flaws that the musical version does, that's a good example of what. Moving on, Katie meets Aaron, we get Stupid with Love. This song has been torn apart by TikTok. And honestly, it's not that bad. The original version of Stupid with Love is another one of the songs in the original Mean Girls musical that I actually quite like. And yes, this version loses a lot of the charm of that version, but I think there's only one chorus in there that really struggles, and that is the chorus that has been, beaten to death on TikTok. The start of this song, up to, I'm outstanding and unplussed, I am filled with calculus, is honestly kind of works. I just think it needed to actually build. I think it needed to find its energy and to get a bit more energetic by the time you get to I'm filled with calculus. Because yes, that line feels really jarring when this version's orchestrations slow down even more on that bit. Christopher Briney is fine in this film. There's not much for Aaron to do. He's a really bland character. Christopher Briney is fine. Did you want more? Did you want me to say more? Aaron Samuels is not a character you get much out of. This is something you see in the original. This is something you see in the musical. He's not a very interesting character. But hey, it could be worse. Could be Cameron Dallas. But I think a lot of my problems with this film are summed up with the song Apex Predator. Because this is where we really see the lack of stylization hurt this film. Well, first of all, we can talk about the mixing of this song, because why are the two strongest singers in this cast auto-tuned to high heaven in this song? I do not understand it. Why? But beyond that, the stylization of this song and the choreography and how it's just, I'm about to say already, it's staged on screen. There is a better phrase for that, and I don't have it. How this is staged on screen is really jarring compared to everything else that's happening visually. We get a very similar idea to what they do in the stage version, where they're in the school and it's all of the people around the school, but they're all being animalistic because it's Katie comparing it to her time in Africa. Despite the fact that because Rice isn't the most confident singer, Katie doesn't sing very much of this song. The idea is there, but with its commitment, it's about 50%. And I think if they had stylized this even more, it could have actually worked. The idea is there, but it feels like it's only going halfway. Think about this number. Think about how they stage Apex Predator in this film and change the actual setting and where it's filmed to be the African plains. Or even redecorate the school like they do in later songs in this film to be more jungle-like, to have the lockers having trees coming out of them, having vines coming down from the ceiling. It doesn't go far enough with that stylization. It doesn't make it camp enough. It's funny, like, the idea is right here, and the full commitment is right here, but they're about there. The best moments in this film is when it really leans in to musical theatre and the campness of Mean Girls. That's when it really differentiates itself from previous versions and actually feels like it has any sense of identity. Think about the musicalization of the moment October 3rd. Think about the musicians in the tree and that little joke there that I thought was really, really funny. These things that kind of point out the musical theatre genre, play with it and lean fully into it really, really work. But this film feels scared to be a musical, and we should have seen this coming, because they were scared to show it's a musical in the marketing. They were scared to show it was a musical in the title. You can only tell that this was a musical version on that awful poster because there was a single musical note on one of the rings. That fear of commitment to musical theatre is what really sinks this film, because if you're not committing 100% to the musical theatre genre in a film, it's not going to work. They go back to Regina's, we get What's Wrong With Me, which is, it's a fine song, it's a bit bland, and they don't really stylize this number at all or do much with it. It's just kind of filmed in a closet with a music box. It's fine. And we get Regina's mom, who is modernized fairly well, I guess. I mean, this kind of just works because it's meant to be cringy, and it was meant to be cringy in the original, so updating it, and it still feels cringy. Well done. And soon we lead into the song Sexy. You start with the different Instagram lives, which is a cute way to do it, I guess. And I like how it's not just one portrait screen for the entire time. They do have different people getting ready for the party. At least that's like something visually more interesting, because I feel like a lot of the time when films try and do like the portrait style of filming, it just doesn't really work. But that's more of a problem for me in general with films trying to replicate like the TikTok style of filming more than this film's original problem. But do you know what song actually really does work in this film and shows how much this film would work better if it just leaned into stylization a little bit more? Somebody Gets Hurt. By freezing this moment, by changing the lighting, by really defining this moment and giving it very different cinematography to everything else in this film, you highlight this moment and you highlight the non-naturalism of this moment. And because of that, Somebody Gets Hurt actually gets that massive impact that it needs, that this moment needs, and shows that they know that they can do it, that this film has the ability to actually commit and to make something that's actually stylistically different and stylistically a musical. So why aren't you doing this more? There is a thing about this film that the more I sat through it, it's not an inherently painful watch, but the fact that it goes halfway on so many things just frustrated me so much, because it's so close. I really want to enjoy a Mean Girls musical. It hurts me so much that I don't love the original stage show, because I am a massive Mean Girls fan. I love the original film. I think the original film is one of my favorite films of all time. But the thing is that it's so close. It's so close to working in so many places. And songs like Somebody Gets Hurt shows that it understands what it needs to do, but it just doesn't commit all the time. Like in Revenge Party, which starts out with a completely redesigned school, which if you can do it for this song, why didn't you do it for Apex Predator? Oh my god. But then halfway through, we just get the regular school again. And we also get one of the worst shots I've ever seen in cinematic history when they changed to handheld cam for Katie running down a school hall. When I said I wanted you to stylize, that is not what I meant. Literally, I will show you. If you have not seen this film, I'm going to show you exactly what this looked like. this is the angle that you get in the actual film. You are here. And it's just her singing the lines like this, and it's shaking. I watched a snake eat a cow. One candy cane, please. It's this. It's literally this. So hello. What's more, I think this film, for all of its struggles, actually does get a lot of really fun little jokes in there. I think one of the best examples of this is in the talent show, where we start with Damien's act, where he's performing something in French and you don't quite get it. But then at the end, it's revealed that he's been singing the iCarly theme song in French this whole time. And it's a really funny little bit. There's so many like little quirky moments in this film that are original to this version that feel really fun. But yes, at this point, Katie has been feeding Regina weight gain bars. They're gonna ruin Regina's life. She falls at the talent show, and now she's out. She's not popular anymore. Everyone loves Katie. Now Katie's a bitch. Oh no. We get the similar plot points to the original film and the musical, where instead of going to Janice's art show, Katie runs a party at a house. They cut the song Whose House Is This?, which is the greatest decision this musical made at all. Honestly, that gains it a whole extra star in its star rating, because, oh my god, if anyone turns around and says, yeah, my favorite song in the Mean Girls musical is Whose House Is This?, I will be severely confused. And you get a fun moment in Someone Gets Hurt reprise. World burn happens. It's all right. There's a really nice shot that's in the trailer, actually, where everyone's fighting. It goes through in different angles, and like, that's a cool shot, I guess. That's a nice bit of stylization. But again, it could have gone even further. And I think the fact that instead of having the book be printed out so you can have a lot of these things passed around and thrown around, and like think in the stage musical where you have all these sheets of paper falling everywhere, by making it just go around on people's phones, you do lose that like physical idea of the burn book being copied and shared around everywhere, which again could have really helped this film with its cinematography and the actual like staging and the way that it puts together this moment. But yeah, you get the fight, you get the gym scene, you get a really, really bad joke that just really falls flat, where one of the ensemble members is like, oh, I'm sorry that I said you were dragging in that number. That joke did not land. And you get I'd Rather Be Me. I'd Rather Be Me is a song that I've kind of had a weird relationship with, because when the musical first dropped, I liked this song. Then everyone and their mother sang this song, and it became a little bit like This Is Me from Greatest Showman, where it's a good song, but because you've heard it 50 million times, you're kind of like, I'm done with this song. I don't need to hear it ever again. And now I'm back to being, you know what, I kind of like this song again. And this version, this film, does a really cute thing where I'd Rather Be Me is done in one take. And they decide to have Regina hit by the bus at the end of this song. Genius. These are really good ideas. And I feel like because of that, this sequence is one of the strongest in the entire film. I don't think you get as much of the sense of the school actually rallying around Janice. You don't get that sense of actual like community building, because a lot of the time they're just kind of filming this on their phone. And you have that disconnect. Whereas in the original film and in the stage musical, you have this real sense of everyone going, yeah, Janice, you know what? That bitch is right. Whereas it feels more like they're filming this in this version because she's going on an outburst, which really is an element that weakens this film a lot. So yeah, good ideas here, but we're lacking that connection, and we're lacking that actual like building up towards the actual moral of this story of like community and coming together and not fighting each other over petty little things, and feminism. Those are all the morals of this story. But because there's such a disconnect between literally every character in this film, we don't really get that. Katie feels bad. She stops being plastic. She gets shunned. She joins the mathletes. There's a cool cameo from the only OG mean girl who would actually accept the pay for this film, Lindsay Lohan. But now we're at prom. And this film ends with I See Stars, which is a cute moment, but I don't know. I feel like because we lose a lot of the moral from the original story, this moment doesn't really feel as impactful, despite the fact that it's a pretty good song. And that's the Mean Girls musical film. It's not a hard watch. I feel like if you shut your brain off, and you like Mean Girls enough, and you've seen the original, you can sit through Mean Girls and you'd be like, yeah, that's a decent film. And when I came out of it, I feel like I was a lot more positive on the thing as a whole, because I was going into it expecting literally the worst thing ever, which I don't think it is. I don't think the Mean Girls film is literally the worst movie musical ever made. But what really frustrates me about it is that it shows so much potential and shows so many elements where it seems like it's almost got what it needs to grab to make it work, but it hasn't committed fully and doesn't really want to commit fully to being a musical, that it falls flat. It half-asses itself on both of the key criteria that I have for a musical film. Yeah, it adapts things and cuts things from the musical, but there's so many elements of this film that feel like it's just kind of living in the original film's shadow. And funnily enough, I feel like the moments where it actually leans into the stylization is where it gains its own identity and actually adapts itself more. So by pulling back on one of the criteria, it manages to pull back on both. This feels like a film with a lot of studio meddling. It feels like a film that is trying to appeal to everyone at once. It's trying to appeal to Generation Z. It's trying to appeal to TikTokers. It's trying to appeal to fans of Mean Girls. It's trying to appeal to musical theatre fans. It's trying to appeal to people who hate musicals. And you can't do that all at once. You cannot do that all at once. And because it's trying to do everything, it does nothing. It tries to appeal to everyone instead of doing what it needed to do, which was making the best musical version of Mean Girls. Would I say I like it more than the original stage show? I feel like it has moments, and I feel like because it cuts a lot of the fluff, it flows a little bit better than the original Mean Girls musical on stage. But I think I would have to sit down and watch the whole show on stage, which I can do because it's coming to London in June. Very cool. To say which version was stronger. But if you were to compare this to the original Mean Girls film, there's absolutely no competition there. But as always, theatre and film are what? Subjective. So what did you think of the Mean Girls film? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you neither it? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. If you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me out, helps out the channel. Here's some links to my videos on screen right now, and a link to my Instagram if you want to drop me a follow over there. But that's it for me today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.